Susan Yockey with VOA's Middle East Monitor. Coming up, rescue and aid efforts drive on in quake-ravaged parts of Turkey.
The biggest concern right now is for the welfare of those people who are sleeping out of doors in nights which are freezing cold.
The U.S. is concerned about a trend toward military rule in Iran. Despite U.S. opposition, Palestinians seek UNESCO membership. And the next Tunisian government faces formidable economic problems. It's all ahead on The Voice of America. The death toll from Sunday's major earthquake in eastern Turkey is now well over 500, with some 1,600 people listed as injured. Those numbers are expected to change frequently in the coming days as rescue workers continue their frantic search for victims of the 7.2 magnitude tremor. Turkish authorities are racing to provide shelter for thousands of earthquake victims left homeless and battling bad weather. VOA's Paul Westphaling wanted an update on the situation and tried several times to speak with someone in the affected area, but telephone links were not good. He was able to reach Joseph Lowry with the International Federation of the Red Cross in Budapest. He was having some of the same phone problems, but was able to speak with people today in the affected area. He told VOA some international aid, including tents, clothing, and food, has already arrived in the devastated area.
People are finding it hard to get to the phone, and telecommunications still aren't fantastic down there, as you might expect after such a huge earthquake and such a lot of destruction. So the main concern, the biggest concern right now, is for the welfare of those people who are sleeping out of doors in nights which are freezing cold. To that end, we've released an appeal, a preliminary appeal, for some 10 million Swiss francs, which is about $10 million US as well, really to get as many tents, sleeping bags, blankets, and all the ancillary equipment to the van area as soon as we possibly can. Many tents are already there on the ground. People are in tents already, but we through the Turkish Red Crescent are trying to reach the 50,000 most vulnerable, most urgent cases that we can, and trying to do that as soon as we can.
It is cold at night. It is raining. It is snowing. These are not very good conditions.
They're not good conditions either to be working in or certainly to be living in, and the remoteness of the area. It's 1,200 kilometers from Istanbul, 900 kilometers from Ankara. Makes it very challenging. Also, of course, the fact that infrastructure has been damaged. But the one saving grace is that Turkey has always. It's prone to large earthquakes. It plans for it. Turkish Red Crescent is an enormous organization, very well versed and very well trained in responding to these types of disasters.
Where exactly is this earthquake? I'm hearing it's in eastern Turkey along the Iranian border. Can you pinpoint it a little better than that?
Yes, the epicenter was in Van province. Van is it's in a mountainous region near the Iranian border, but halfway down the country, close to the Iranian and Armenian borders. The earthquake was so strong it was felt in both countries, also in Armenia and Iran. The Iranian Red Crescent has responded. It's already sent tents and blankets across the border to help the Turks as well.
Are you still calling this a rescue operation, or has it turned into a recovery operation, meaning that you don't expect to find any more people alive?
Normally, in 72 hours, you start losing hope for people, especially in these cold conditions. But I think the efforts are continuing, and I don't know how much longer they'll continue for. I mean, you remember in Haiti, people who were trapped near close to sources of water managed to survive for 8, 10, 12 days. So, of course, relatives won't give up hope, and rescue teams will be very loath to give up hope as well. But the recovery operation, the relief and recovery operation started at the same time as the rescue operation.
That was Joseph Lowry with the International Federation of the Red Cross in Budapest, Hungary. Winter is approaching in Turkey, and fear is growing of a greater crisis facing the quake-ravaged area. Dorian Jones reports from Istanbul. Other nations are reaching out to help.
The government has now accepted offers of help from 30 countries around the world, including Israel. Relations between Israel and Turkey have been strained since Israeli commandos raided a Gaza-bound aid flotilla last year, killing 9 Turkish activists. Turkish President Abdullah Gül welcomed the help. He said nearly 50 presidents called with offers of help and that the Foreign Ministry will reach out as soon as it is determined there is a need. President Gül says Turkey did not initially make a call for the international community's help, but later reversed its decision. Criticism has been steadily growing over the government's rejection of most international help. Turkey had initially accepted offers of help only from Iran and Azerbaijan, which border the quake-stricken region. Following the quake, Ankara had said it was capable of dealing with the crisis on its own. Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan strongly attacked those who criticised the government's handling of the situation.
Van depremi bir turnusol.
He says the earthquake in and around the city of Van is a litmus test, and that critics of his government are provoking the region's people. He says that critics do not care about the dead, those trapped under the rubble or the collapsed houses. Mr. Erdogan says that they are only trying to profit from the situation. Analysts say the reason behind Ankara's eventual decision to accept aid is a growing concern that the region could be facing an even bigger crisis. The 7.2 magnitude quake destroyed thousands of apartment blocks and levelled numerous villages where the houses are made of clay and mud. With winter fast approaching, authorities are under increasing pressure to provide for those who've lost their homes. While tent cities and field kitchens have been built in several towns and cities, officials have admitted they underestimated the need for tents. Observers say there is now growing awareness on the part of the government that it's in a race against time to accommodate the thousands of homeless before winter sets in. Dorian Jones for VOA News, Istanbul, Turkey.
We invite you to join in with your views at our online poll. This week we ask about the circumstances surrounding the death of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. You can cast your vote at voanews.com/ME and discuss the issue on Facebook on our Middle East Voices page. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps is becoming more involved in running the country, and that Iran may be heading toward military dictatorship. In an interview with VOA's Persian News Network, PNN, Clinton says the United States plans an online embassy and wants to circumvent what she termed Iran's electronic curtain. VOA's David Gollust reports from the State Department.
Secretary Clinton has expressed concern about a military dictatorship in Iran before, but her comments to VOA Wednesday were her most explicit on the issue thus far. In an interview with the popular Persian News Network program Parasit, Clinton noted news reports that the Iranian leadership might eliminate the elected post of president. She said the Revolutionary Guards, an elite wing of the military, is becoming more and more involved in the country's economy.
The Quds Force and other elements of the security establishment taking financial stakes or taking over certain economic enterprises. That's part of what I mean about our seeing that there seems to be a moving toward a more military takeover in effect inside Iran.
Clinton said the United States is considering more sanctions to persuade Iran to end suspected efforts to build nuclear weapons.
The strongest sanctions were adopted by the United Nations when it became abundantly clear that the regime is pursuing a nuclear weapons program. Everyone believes that the covert actions, the covert facilities, the misleading information is part of an attempt by the regime to acquire nuclear weapons, which would be very destabilizing.
But she said the U.S. is pursuing a two-track strategy of sanctions and diplomacy. Her interview comes 2 weeks after the Quds Force of the Revolutionary Guards was implicated in a plot to assassinate the ambassador from Saudi Arabia in Washington. The Secretary of State said the United States does not seek conflict with the Iranian government, but wants to support those in Iran seeking democratic reform. Parasit, a satirical news show, primarily reaches younger Iranians through the Internet and satellite broadcasts. Clinton said the U.S. is trying several ways to circumvent what she called Tehran's electronic curtain, including creation of an online virtual embassy for Iran.
What we're going to do, despite the fact we do not have diplomatic relations, is I'm going to announce the opening of a virtual embassy in Tehran. The website will be up and going at the end of the year. We're going to continue to reach out, particularly to students, and encourage that you come back and study in the United States, and we're going to look for other people-to-people exchanges.
Clinton said the United States would like to see Iran's government change and begin to support the human rights and aspirations of its people. She said there are reasons for regret on both sides in the two countries' troubled history over the past half-century, and that the United States would like to forge a new relationship. David Gullis, VOA News, the State Department.
Some U.S. lawmakers say Iran crossed a red line in its alleged involvement in a foiled plot to assassinate Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the United States and are calling on President Barack Obama to reevaluate U.S. policy toward Iran. Several expert witnesses told the House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security Wednesday that if Iranian security forces were involved, as the Obama administration says, the plan would have to have been approved at the highest levels of the Tehran government. Tehran denies any involvement in the plot. VOA congressional correspondent Cindy Sain reports from Capitol Hill.
The House Committee on Homeland Security focused on the potential terrorism threat to the United States posed by Iran. Several lawmakers pointed out that the United States has designated the Iranian government as the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism for decades. But the chairman of the committee, Republican Peter King, said the alleged plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in a Washington restaurant takes Iran's hostilities to a new level.
So you have the assassination of a foreign ambassador, you have the willingness to kill hundreds of Americans. This is an act of war.
Retired U.S. Army General Jack Keane agreed and had harsh criticism for President Obama's Iran policy.
The Iranian bungled operation to use proxies to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States and to purposely plan the operation inside the United States is a stunning rebuke to the Obama administration's policy of negotiation and isolation with the Iranians.
Keane and some of the other invited witnesses said the United States should engage in covert operations against leaders of Iran's elite Quds Force military unit, who are believed to have been involved in the plot. The experts testified it is unimaginable that Quds Force members would engage in such a plot without approval from the highest levels of the Iranian government. All of the experts agreed that the United States should work with its allies to impose sanctions on Iran's central bank. But Representative King said that would not be enough.
I think, for instance, we should expel Iranian officials both in New York at the UN and also here in Washington. Many of them are working with spies.
One of the witnesses at the hearing, analyst Lawrence Korb with the Center for American Progress Research Group, defended the Obama administration's policies, saying that current international sanctions on Iran are effective and that the country is experiencing political turmoil.
My feeling is that this attack, or the alleged attack, is a sign of desperation. It shows that the sanctions are working, and while we should not take anything off the table, I think that what we need to do is use this occasion as an opportunity to assemble a coalition to increase sanctions.
Some Democratic members of the panel, including Representative Benny Thompson, agreed and cautioned against overreacting to the alleged plot.
Iran is a nation that has already isolated itself from the world community. It has long lost even more credibility following its latest round of illegitimate elections and the Arab Spring that has swept the Middle East. Let us not lend them the legitimacy they need by taking reckless actions that would lead down the path to another war.
The Homeland Security hearing came on the same day that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told VOA that the United States has very strong evidence about the alleged plot by an Iranian American to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States. She called the plot shocking and said Washington hopes Iran will turn over a second suspect who is a member of Iran's Quds Force. Cindy Sain, VOA News on Capitol Hill.
Despite strong opposition from the United States, the Palestinians are seeking full membership in UNESCO, the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization, which is currently meeting in Paris. As VOA correspondent Meredith Buell reports from Washington, the move jeopardizes America's funding for the organization.
It is Christmas Eve in Bethlehem, where millions of pilgrims and tourists visit the Church of the Nativity each year. Built over the site, tradition says, is the birthplace of Christ. Palestinians have asked UNESCO to make this a World Heritage Site, but without a Palestinian state, they say that can't happen. So the Palestinians have asked UNESCO for full membership, following September's request to be admitted to the United Nations. Man Rashid Erekat is the Palestine Liberation Organization's representative to the U.S.
Part of that is to complement what we are doing at the United Nations, and secondly, because we really want to preserve our own religious and cultural sites.
A request for the admission of Palestine to UNESCO.
UNESCO's executive board gave initial approval to the Palestinians' request, despite opposition from the United States.
I think that they believe that this is a way to advance their cause. I think they're wrong.
Danielle Pletka of the American Enterprise Institute.
The problem is that peace isn't going to come out of a bottle. It's not going to come out of a process at the UN. It's going to come out of a negotiated agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And this step is not on that road.
UNESCO promotes education and arts in developing countries such as Afghanistan. Palestinian membership could trigger a cutoff in U.S. contributions to UNESCO, more than $70 million per year, about 20% of its budget. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Victoria Nuland.
The problem here is that a move in UNESCO is not going to create a Palestinian state that is secure, that is living next to Israel in security, in self-determination, and in mutual recognition.
20 years of talks with Israel have failed to produce a Palestinian state. PLO representative Man Rashid Erekat.
Going to the UN is a diplomatic, political, non-violent, legitimate effort on the part of the Palestinians to have the UN address Palestinian concerns and once and for all put an end to the Israeli occupation.
The Palestinians hope full membership in UNESCO and recognition of the Church of the Nativity as a World Heritage Site will bring them closer to becoming an independent state. Meredith Buell, VOA News, Washington.
Freed Israeli soldier Shalit has become a household name after his release by Hamas militants following 5 years in captivity. Nearly 500 Palestinian prisoners have already been set free in exchange, with more to follow, but little is known about them. Reporter Rebecca Collard in Ramallah has been investigating and joins us on the line. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. Please give us a sense of who these Palestinian prisoners are.
Well, of the 477 we had last week released, you have a really wide variety. So you have people that are top Hamas operatives, people who were involved in founding the Hamas military wing, people convicted of very atrocious crimes. But you also have people among this 477 who are more sympathetic characters, young women, people who weren't convicted of violent crimes. So there's a great variation here, really.
Well, who will be released in the second batch we're hearing about?
Well, I spoke with Israeli officials last week trying to get a sense of who these people will be, the next 550, and on what criteria they're going to choose it, because it will be essentially Israel's choice about which prisoners they will release in this next batch over the next 2 months. So what they told me was, first of all, it will be more minor prisoners, people convicted of several years or something like this in an Israeli prison. And the key thing is that these people will not have what the officials call blood on their hands. So basically people who are not responsible for the deaths of Israeli civilians.
Well, how many of the prisoners came to the West Bank?
Here in the West Bank, we had about 100 come back. Now, a lot more than that were actually originally from the West Bank. So Israel did an assessment of the prisoners that were going to be released, judging what kind of a security risk they thought they would be. And so about, I think, 130 or so prisoners who were originally from the West Bank were deported, some relocated to the Gaza Strip, and some sent abroad.
Well, was there opposition to the relocation?
Yeah, you had prisoners' rights groups here in Ramallah saying that this relocation and deportation is illegal, and that these prisoners can't be forced to go abroad. But essentially, Hamas agreed to this, and this was kind of forced on the prisoners. So when they were released, they didn't have a lot of choice in what was going to happen. So while you have this opposition by local prisoners' rights groups here, you have basically Israel trying to protect its security. I had one Israeli official basically saying to me, how can we let killers back to the West Bank? So Israel needed to take some steps to guard its own security.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for your time today.
Thank you.
That's reporter Rebecca Collard speaking with us from Ramallah. If you would like to read Rebecca's story on this subject, visit our website at voanews.com/me. What's next for Tunisia? After a revolution and its first democratic elections, the nation must now craft a new political system. The next government faces formidable economic problems. And while Tunisia's popular uprising inspired revolts across the Arab world this year, can it serve as a model for future Arab democracies? Lisa Bryant takes a look at these questions from the capital, Tunis.
After the celebrations in Tunisia, many people are back at work or at coffee houses, a favorite hangout for the many unemployed men. The moderate Islamist Al Nahda party won the most seats since Sunday's vote for a constituent assembly, but it's already in talks with its rivals. A Nahda spokeswoman, Yusra Khanouchi, says the party's message is inclusive.
And we believe these ethical values that inspire us are universal values, and we believe there is much in common between us and other Tunisian secular parties.
The assembly must write a new constitution and appoint an interim government to run daily affairs. That's only part of the challenge. Unemployment, which helped drive Tunisia's January revolution, remains high. Investment is down. So is the country's key tourism industry. But political blogger Karim Bouzouita is optimistic that will change. He claims the revolution also eradicated widespread corruption that existed under ousted dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali.
With Ben Ali's regime, we got a mafia. In Tunisia, it wasn't a free market. You want to make business, you have to deal with the Ben Alis.
Tunisia expert Stephen Ekovich of the American University of Paris predicts a tough road ahead for this small country.
The problems are long-term, they're deep. It's going to take a long time for Tunisia to pull out of it. But if any country can do it, I think Tunisia can.
But can Tunisia, which inspired other Arab Spring uprisings, be a model for democratic change? Two other Arab countries, Egypt and Morocco, hold elections next month. Tunisia is small, modern, relatively homogeneous, and Western-oriented. Its population is highly educated. Unlike protests elsewhere in the Arab world, its revolution was relatively peaceful. Karim Bouzouita.
Tunisia will be an experience, sure. I don't know if the Tunisian experience will be a model. It's not depend from Tunisians, but from other people, from Syrian, from Yemeni, from Egyptian.
But the Arab world will be watching Tunisia's democratic experience. If it works, it may become the first of others to come. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Tunis.
This has been VOA's Middle East Monitor. Join us Monday through Friday for news from the region and of interest to the regions. Coming up on International Edition, diplomats gather in South Korea to try to restart talks. Thanks for tuning in to the Voice of America.
For more on the stories you've heard on our radio programs, visit our website at voanews.com. That's where you'll find in-depth reports, related stories, videos, and more from our team of correspondents. Or take the news with you by downloading podcasts of your favorite VOA programs. That's at voanews.com. Online news for a changing world.